There was actually a study published a couple years ago in the Journal of Political Economy, which stated that through a rigorous mathematical analysis, that studies show 50% greater efficacy of psychopharmaceutical medications when they are funded. 50% greater efficacy when they are funded. Now, you tell me if that sounds unbiased. Psychiatry is not your friend. A lot of people will listen to this and get triggered because they'll say, oh, I'm on medications and they're really helping me so much. It's a medication trap. It's not designed to rehabilitate you. It's designed to keep you sick. If you look at psychopharmacology, it tends to rely on philosophical presuppositions that aren't even really that valid. We can't change ourselves, that we're a victim to our mental states. You think about it, it's not that the field of psychopharmacology is totally invalid, but a lot of the medications that they're pushing are invalid and end up causing more side effects and harm in the long run, even if you get some relief in the short term. Now, that's not to say that medications never have a place in anyone's life for any reason whatsoever, but the research shows, as somebody who is in psychology and studies it, that usually these diagnoses are abused and they're warped to keep people trapped in a mindset that they're not enough so that they stay on the medications because the system is rigged to keep people in that mindset because it is profitable. That's just what the research shows. Why am I telling you all this? Well, somebody with a background in psychology, with a background in existential understandings of philosophy and phenomenology, I just think it's important for people to know that we don't have to be a victim to our mindsets. That doesn't mean that we don't have issues. That doesn't mean that some of us don't have a bigger cross to bear psychologically than others. Some of us come in with genetic predispositions which make it so that we are more prone to depression, we're more prone to anxiety, we're more prone to anger, whatever it might be. But just narrowing that down and calling it a mental disorder, which is made up by the DSM, the Diagnostic Statistical Manual here in the United States, in 1952, they came out with the first version of the DSM. And it was basically put there to try to put boundaries around these different conditions. And by the time they got to the third edition in the 1980s, they were fully making up chemical processes that they didn't even know existed just to perpetuate the idea of a mental disorder. What they do in psychiatry is they start with the assumption of what's normal. So they make up the standard. So that's why you see things now recently, they added prolonged grief disorder. So if you don't grieve within whatever the board of psychiatry that creates these disorders says, if you don't grieve within that time period, then it's prolonged grief disorder. What we have to realize is that, yes, there are biochemical issues that people might have that are based in their genetics and based in their life experiences and trauma, etc. And yes, that some people need help with these issues, but we jump down into medications so fast that we don't really even get a chance to see what somebody can do through their own authentic therapeutic interventions and finding the right spiritual help. Psychiatry is not your friend. A lot of people will listen to this and get triggered. Oh, I'm on medications and they're really helping me so much. Well, I'm glad that they're helping stabilize you. But that's all they're doing is they're helping stabilize you. They're not solving underlying problems. They're not solving your orientation. They're stabilizing you so that you can survive through something. Now, there might be a period of time in life where somebody's severely struggling with huge emotional strings, or they're having a so-called schizophrenic episode. And I say so-called schizophrenic because what you see in schizophrenia is not really the right word. It's actually an increase in personality, whereas schizophrenia implies a decrease in personality. It's an increase in activity. But if you're having these issues, first of all, you have to understand genetic science, that you have some genetic predispositions, and we don't fully understand all the mechanisms of how they express epigenetically and neurologically. But a lot of times what long-term studies show is that while the short-term relief is valid, the long-term effects become worse. It's not a blanket statement like every story is the same. So some people will argue that in some cases the medications have been life-saving, and I don't dispute that. But what I'm saying is that we need better interventions that are more supportive to the whole person, that don't get them into a medication trap. That's what psychiatry is. It's a medication trap. It's not designed to rehabilitate you. It's designed to keep you sick, because you have to identify as somebody who's depressed, have depressive disorder. So to keep reinforcing to keep their diagnosis intact. Whereas if I say, oh, wait a second, I've got a part of me that's depressed. That's not all of me. That doesn't define my possibility to heal. That just defines a certain thing that I struggle with. That's a part of my personality. And that's what I've been doing for, 15 years now. I have strong genetics in my family for depression, but I didn't let myself succumb to it. I got diagnosed when I was a kid, oppositional defiance disorder, depressive issues, alcohol abuse disorder, ADD, ADHD. Okay, I got diagnosed with like 12 different things. And they put me on like 15 different meds. And they were horrible for me. And they were causing issues. So I had to get off, by the time I was 17, I had to get off all these medications to taper off of them, by the way, which is dangerous. You have to have proper medical oversight. You cannot just pull medications, okay? Because they're biochemically dangerous to pull if you don't know what you're doing. I've been studying this issue for years. I've been dealing with these issues for 15 years, right? So I got off all my medications and I learned how to control my depression through my own free will, just by vigilance. In Eastern Orthodoxy, they call it nepsis, vigilance. So I notice the depression coming, stop it, redirect my behavior to something different. That's just rewiring the brain. That's basic neuroscience. So if you're somebody who's stuck in this medication trap, it's not hopeless. The system is rigged so that you believe that you're powerless over your mental states. It's not true. We are not powerless over our mental states. We might have challenges, but we are not powerless over our mental states. If you buy into that story, you identify yourself as a victim, and you play in to the idea that you're stuck, that you can't do anything about it. It is not true. I have been sober for 15 years. Now, imagine if I believed I have alcohol abuse disorder and there's nothing I can do except for be pumped full of medications and live a life of quiet despair. No. I have depression. All I can do is take medications. I can't handle it. I can't do anything about it. So we're not given encouragement. We're not given tools. That's why when I met my mentor, Dr. Strachan, he hammered it home. I have a choice. And he helped me understand what my personality is, right? Because if you don't realize that you have a personality that is made up of unique predispositions, which are like neurological circuits that are wired into you from life experience and genetic predispositions, and they all have their own different orientations, right? That we have different aims in life. That's why when part of us is angry and another part of us is guilty for being angry, we start seeing that, wait a second, I'm complex. I'm not just one thing. You know, how many times have I gotten upset at my wife and then I circle back around and I say, I'm sorry, I got upset. I was being a jerk, right? But the part of me that apologizes is not the same part that got angry, right? So we have to realize that, like what Christ says in Matthew 15, the heart is full of all sorts of evil. But also the heart is full of all of our potential and all of our gifts and all of our love. We are created with the potential to truly love, to live oriented towards God. So I'm making this video because I see so many people out there who are on medications and they think that it's needed. And the problem is what the research really shows is short-term relief, and long-term it's barely better than placebo. And then when you get into the deep side effects of some of these meds, you're often worse off physically, not just mentally, but physically you have health issues because of what these medications do. So, I mean, even the most conservative estimates that I've seen show that really only a very, very small percentage of people should even consider medication. Some people, Dr. Strachan says, don't do it at all. Don't do any of them, right? I am partial to that approach. Although if somebody came to me with a story about, I almost died and then I took this medication and I didn't kill myself and it gave me a chance to stay around and now I'm doing better, of course I'll listen to your story. It's not, see, the point is not to attack you and what you needed. The point is to attack a system which is abusing people and putting them in traps that they don't need to be in. And you should be very wary, and I say should, I encourage people to be very wary of diagnostic structures. You need to know that they're not scientifically based. They're not based in an actual controlled analysis that we can study. Okay, saying somebody has prolonged grief disorder or oppositional defiance disorder, that just means that we've created a standard socially that people shouldn't verge off. So what a fancy way of saying oppositional defiance is you won't do what we tell you. So you're oppositional defiant disorder. You won't conform to our expectations, so we're going to call that a disorder. With ADD, you won't sit still in class. Well, a lot of people with so-called ADD are just gifted kids with different gifts than what we expect. They're bouncing off the walls. They're not meant neurologically. Their bodies and their brains are not wired genetically to sit in a classroom all day. They have different styles of learning. They'd make great hunter-gatherers. They'd make great explorers. They'd make great people who learn well on a field trip, for example. The point that I'm making to you is that we are unique human beings, and these disorders are defined based on a standard that's made up, based on a social norm, not based on a healing reality, not based on a reality of mental health. It's based on a norm, okay? And then you get labeled if you deviate from that norm. Now, that doesn't mean that your suffering is not valid. Your suffering is valid, but we have to filter that suffering through understanding that you're a unique human being with a unique personality and that you have unique wants and needs, which if we could understand you better and what your needs and wants are, and your self-will, your ability to have free will and choose different ways of responding, then you can actually make progress without needing these meds. So I got off all of my meds and I started working on myself, and I would get these huge waves of depression, but I would work through it. So it would be for days, and then it would be for hours. And now I hardly get depressed for a couple minutes. And my wife has been sick and in bed for years. And I don't let myself get depressed. I let myself grieve, I'll feel sad, I'll cry, but I don't go down the despondent road. And now that I'm aligned with Christ, I've found my Christian faith, I have even more of an ally that I don't have to choose depression because he's the true physician. So there is hope. I've been working on this for a while, and I just need to put this message out there that if you're somebody who feels like you have to be a victim to psychiatric diagnosis, it is not true. I don't care what the diagnosis is. I have Dr. Strachan's 60-year history as a clinical psychologist. He had worked with clients for 60 years. He was around before the DSM even got approved. That's how long he's been doing this. And his mentors and peers, he went to Princeton and Arizona State University in Phoenix, ASU, and his mentors wouldn't even let him refer to the DSM. One time he wrote a paper in his psychology class where he basically wrote the paper based on diagnostic structures, and the teacher said, it came back red lettered all over the place. And the teacher said, look, I need you to rewrite this paper, but write it in terms of descriptions instead of labels. So Roger got it. He rewrote the paper in terms of descriptions, what the feelings are, what the sensations are, what the dynamics of the person's life are, rather than you have so-and-so disorder. What's the difference? One opens up into unique human persons that have unique situations and unique personalities, and the other closes down into a limited structure where you're not talking to a person, you're talking to a label. Well, guess what? If you're a label, you have no hope. Labels can't change. Labels can't transform. Labels can't heal. People can. Dynamics can change, but stagnant structures, they can't change. So the question is not whether any type of medication is ever appropriate. The question is, what type of situation are we in the first place? If you think the solution to accept a label and take a pill, you don't realize what type of creature you are. You don't realize free will. You don't realize that you're not just one voice, that you have multiple parts of you, that you can rewire your brain. We are a society that is overlabeled and overdiagnosed. And we jump to examples of extreme mental health challenges that are not even relevant to 99% of people. Why should somebody going in saying, I'm struggling with depression, the first response be to get a medication? Rather than listening to that person. Well, what are you dealing with? What's going on with your life? Are you going through a divorce? Do you have endogenous depression that you're born with? Or is it situational depression to get laid off? Because that's something you need to work through, not something that you need to medicate. It drives me nuts. I'm going to be doing more videos. I'm so sick of psychiatry. We deserve better. So I'm writing a paper about it right now, and I'll probably share it on this channel. Bye-bye.